I hope you'll go along with this rather unusual setting and the fact that I remain seated when I get introduced, and the fact that I'm going to come to you mostly through this medium here for the rest of the show. And I should tell you that I'm backed up by quite a staff of people between here and Menlo Park, where Stanford Research is located, some 30 miles south of here. And if every one of us does our job well, it'll all go very interesting, I think.
What you're watching is a moment that changed the world. This is Douglas Engelbart. It's December 9th, 1968, right here in San Francisco. He was a true pioneer. He led the groundbreaking Augmented Human Intellect Research Center at Stanford Research Institute. And on that day, about 50 years ago, Engelbart articulated a set of technologies and a way of thinking that we are only now, nearly 50 years later, beginning to realize.
The research program that I'm going to describe to you is quickly characterizable by saying, if in your office, you, intellectual worker, were supplied with a computer display backed up by a computer that was alive for you all day and was instantly responsive, instantly responsive to every action you had, how much value could you derive from that?
He's about to demonstrate for the very first time word processing, the computer mouse, hypertext, video conferencing, collaborative real-time editing, dynamic file linking, version control, and much more. It's what they call the mother of all demos. But more important than any specific feature or application was a new way of thinking. That way of thinking replaced what we had previously thought as the purpose of computers, computing, with something brand new. Those things we use to tabulate the census or to calculate the trajectory of surface-to-air missiles or write accounting entries to a ledger and perform arithmetic, those things could be a whole new class of tools. One that could augment human intellect, help us communicate, organize, share, and store knowledge. Of course, it was also very basic. Before we could even begin to fulfill that vision, there was a lot of work to do.
And made a shopping list. So it's got quite a few items on it, and if I want to, I can see that, yes, those are numbered statements. And I can say there are ways I can scan down it, like I can point to 10 and say put it at the top, and I scan up and point to 23, and I got quite a few. And I remember that's about as far as it got when she said, well, call me back when you're ready to go shopping and I'll tell you the rest of the things. So let me jump back to the head of the list, and I can do things like begin to reorganize it a little bit. Well, I say after bananas, it's more likely that I'll take the carrots there, and so carrots moved right up behind bananas, and aspirin doesn't really belong there. I think aspirin goes after paper towels.
This was pretty basic. But Engelbart was decades ahead of his time. And over time, the basic building blocks were put into place. They were refined, made progressively more powerful and more useful. And these steady improvements were punctuated by a number of pivotal moments. New applications, like relational databases and word processing, allowed us to generalize computing power and apply it to whole new domains. Perhaps the most important single example of this was the first spreadsheet application, VisiCalc. It was released in 1979 and launched in the new, wildly popular personal computer called the Apple II. It was transformative. This was the application that propelled the personal computer to become the essential tool for business. Over the next couple of decades, computers went from being these things which were rare and very expensive to something that you found on the desk of every office worker. The machines themselves rapidly became more powerful, more capable, faster with more memory and better input devices. The operating systems improved relentlessly. Waves of new categories of business software were created: ERP, HRIS, CRM, project management, source control, unified communications, accounting systems. As exciting as this movement was, something wasn't right. All this amazing technology wasn't making us more productive. In the old days, you could invest $1 to buy new equipment for your manufacturing plant and receive several dollars back in increased productivity. That had been true almost since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. But $1 invested in information technology in 1985 That returned about $1. How could that be? Why, if we had these incredible tools, these bicycles for the mind, which opened up whole new possibilities, which allowed us to do things we could never have done before, why didn't we collectively become instantly more productive? The answers aren't simple, but two big things stand out. First is the internet. In 1992, about halfway between Engelbart's demo and today, I went down to the basement of the Clara Hugh building at the University of Victoria in Canada. I was there to collect the login for the school's Unix system, and I was exposed to the internet for the very first time. My tiny little mind was blown. So the web was still about a year away from prevalence, but there was Usenet, the infinite-seeming directory of news groups. There was IRC, there was email. There was the old Unix program Talk, which showed letter by letter what your correspondent was typing live. I could communicate with friends who'd gone to colleges on different sides of the country. I could find people around the world with the same interests as I did. I still remember the first crush I ever had on someone who I had never seen before. This was someone who was like green text on the black background of a VT100 terminal. I still remember the first time I ever settled an argument by looking something up on the internet, connected to the US Geological Survey's Gopher server to determine the number of earthquakes of greater than magnitude 3 each year. And I was right. Ever since then, for my entire adult life, I've been absolutely fascinated by this idea of harnessing computing technology to facilitate human interaction. And that was because of the internet. Over the next decades, more and more people began to discover it. As millions and then tens of millions and then hundreds of millions of people came online, it became more and more obvious we were witnessing the dawn of one of the greatest technological advancements since the development of written language. Whatever comes next, I'm certain that we here in this room are the last generation of human beings who will know life both before and after the internet. So this is the first thing we were missing. And you can imagine most of you will have had this experience sometime between 1998 and 2005, where this incredible tool that opened up all these new possibilities, that allowed us to do things we had never done before, this bicycle for the mind, became basically a rock, like an inert object if it wasn't connected to the internet. The second thing we needed was, in one sense, much simpler, just figuring out how we would all work together given all these new tools. This is a still from the 1960 Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine movie, The Apartment. It's a great movie, by the way, and I owe Ben Evans and Andreessen Horowitz for both the stills and making this comparison I'm about to make. But this is a couple decades before Brooklyn and Frankston released VisiCalc. And at the time, this is what a spreadsheet looked like. The rows and columns were a worksheet. Every floor of the building composed this giant Excel file. At every desk, you had a person playing the role of a cell in a spreadsheet. Communication between the cells was typewriters and carbon copies, actual carbon copies. And the work was carried out on these electromechanical calculating machines, like the one you see here. So this is obviously a very different way of working than what we have today. Imagine the transformations that happened in how insurance companies like this one operated and every other company between then and now. Think about all the articles that appeared in Harvard Business Review over the intervening decades. The management philosophies, the fads and the real innovations, the best-selling books, the movements for greater agility, flexibility, quality, transparency. This was the second missing ingredient, the changes in the way we work together as teams, which are still going on today. As individuals, the continued innovation and improvements, even just the continued proliferation of business software product categories over the last few decades was making us better, faster, and smarter. But as teams, not so much. Communication is the fundamental human challenge. If you ask any executive what their biggest obstacle is, they will tell you coordination, communication, alignment. Even when we're performing well as individuals, groups are hard. And the larger they get, the harder it gets. That's why this is such an exciting challenge. So I have some bad news. We haven't completely solved all that today. And I don't want to suggest that this is a moment with the same amount of historical significance as Engelbart's mother of all demos. But the good news is we have made a significant step. Teams all over the world have transformed through their use of Slack. They've changed the way they work. And in a sense, Slack gave those people the equivalent of giving us, as individual knowledge workers at our desktop computers, the internet. It works for teams. But the largest enterprises are not single teams. They are made up of teams. They are intricate networks of overlapping, interconnected teams, and every one of them is different. Today, we're going to show you how Slack can enhance the communication, coordination, and alignment of the largest organizations in the world, just as we have for single teams. So let's get started.